Justin Snyder, Superfoods. Are you taking ashwagandha? Are you taking lion's mane, turkey tail, these kinds of supplements? I start the conversation off with Justin about martial arts. I'm always intrigued with those who take martial arts and how their lives are so much improved and focused and chess. He's into very ancient things. He's an Australian. He happens to be in northern Italy during this conversation. But he was introduced to these superfoods in India about close to 15 years ago, incidentally, and then decided to make a company out of it for his superfoods, who focuses on the highest quality. He talks about how freeze dried, the process is much higher quality, retains a lot more than many of the supplements that you get now. You only have to have about 10% of the actual supplement to be qualified, to actually be qualified as a supplement. So it's very difficult to determine what's the highest quality. And he talks about that, what the difference is there. He mentions a quote from Gary Brecker recently, how community, whole foods, and exercises are the three essential things that all humans need. Great conversation with Justin. Very fascinating. Thanks so much for watching and listening. Hi, I'm Joey Pinz, and here's my 45-second introduction. After starting my business in the 90s, I started developing poor habits of eating in my diet because I was working way too much. Before you know it, I found myself 340 pounds. The doctor told me if I don't lose the weight, I'm not going to see my daughter graduate. Took the next 7 months, lost 130 pounds. People think there's some secret. Ask me, how'd you lose that weight? Like there's some secret. There is no secret. How did I lose the weight? Just one word: discipline. I've had other successes in life, and I attribute them all to discipline. Now, I'm not the king of discipline, but I believe that it can help all of us. Friends, colleagues convinced me to start a podcast. The podcast mission: how do we better ourselves and society? I talk to interesting people in health, fitness, sport, wellness, business, technology, science, art, and culture. And I eventually ask them how discipline plays a role in their life. Podcast vision: growth through learning from others. Excited to talk to you, Justin Snyder. How has martial arts changed your life?
So when I was growing up in school, and I think this now I understand is quite common with boys, or with males, is that I was always, particularly not when I went to school, but particularly when I went out, I had this concern that something threatening was going to happen. That there was going to be some kind of interaction with somebody, and I wouldn't know what to do, and I would panic. And there was I actually got robbed at knife point when I was 15 in a KFC in the city, and but I just kind of always had in the back of my head this kind of, I guess it's like uncertainty and lack of self confidence. And so when I got to in my early 20s, I watched the movie The Matrix, and I just fell in love with Kung Fu from that movie. And I just kind of like started doing it just because I found it really fascinating. Like I really love, and my business is based on, the similar kind of things, like the ancient kind of cultures and the ancient kind of ideas, like the, Ayurvedic medicine foods and Chinese medicine foods, and like, the way the Australian Aborigines used to eat and used to like survive in the desert with no water, no food. I've just always been very interested in like these kind of ancient traditions being passed down over centuries or millennia. And so like Kung Fu is one of those things that's been passed down almost without being changed in a lot of situations from how it was done thousands of years ago back in China. And so I just kind of got into it, and I just really loved the experience of like challenging myself and like getting used to someone throwing a punch at me and all this kind of stuff. And like my Sifu said to me one day, he said that like we learn how to fight so that we never have to. And I found that really interesting. And it's that thought has stuck with me. And it's this idea of like, he tells this story of he was on the train in England where he used to live, and three gangster guys come up to him and start giving him a hard time, and he just looks at them and they just walked away. And there's been all these research that's been done as well. There's been studies where they ask, hardened criminals, out of all these people, who would you target? And it's always the person who's walking without confidence. They can pick up on that like self-doubt and insecurity and lack of confidence, and they're the people who are most vulnerable. And so I think the martial arts is not about being violent, being aggressive. I've never been a violent person, but it gives me the confidence to know that I can, that I have some degree of skill in terms of protecting myself and my family if it ever comes to that. But it's also about like so much more than that. It's Kung Fu is this beautiful ancient art, like I said, that's like all about energy within your body and the way energy moves throughout your body. And it's about like Robert Downey Jr. said, so in Kung Fu, there's the dummy. There's like the dummy that you practice on, which is the wooden dummy with the arms coming out. And Robert Downey Jr. said, I battled against the dummy for 15 years in order to realize I didn't need to fight with it. And it's this kind of like internal thing you go through where it kind of teaches you that like the way through life it's not struggle. Like I think in school we have this idea that you have to try really hard, that you have to have all this tension and all this like, like unnatural focus and like and stress towards getting something done properly. But I don't think that's the right way to do things. I think all the research is like I've been learning, I've been trying to learn languages and stuff, and like all the research shows that like the more relaxed you are and the more calm you are and the more you just kind of like let it wash over you, the more you're going to retain, as opposed to like stressing about things and like, trying too hard. And martial arts really teaches you that, because when you're fighting the dummy doesn't move. And the more you hit the dummy, the more you hurt yourself, and you realize that it's not about strength and it's not about power. I weigh about 115 kilos or something. Like I'm a big guy. And, my Sifu, who's 15 kilos lighter than me, could throw me across the room without any effort, using 10%, because it's about the way in which you use your body and the angles at which you approach your opponent and the way in which you ground yourself and the energy that you use throughout your body, all in synchronicity in order to throw a punch or to push or whatever. And yeah, I don't know. I just find it so fascinating that I just find Kung Fu, I've been doing it for 15 years now or something. And I'm still just like so excited to do it every time I train. It's wild. Do you do martial arts?
In this fast-paced MSP landscape, how do you stay ahead? Introducing MSPinfluencer.com, your ultimate hub for MSP news, insights, and community connection, powered by Forza Dash. More than 75,000 MSPs subscribe to our MSP Influencer Pulse weekly newsletter, staying informed and ahead of industry trends. Tune in to emerging podcasts from Joey Pinz and leading MSP voices, offering essential tips, powerful insights, and success stories. Explore our multi-authored blogs, crafted specifically for MSP leaders, delivering fresh perspectives and actionable strategies. Celebrate excellence with the industry-leading Forza-MSP Influencer Awards, recognizing innovation, leadership, and impact in the MSP community. Join thousands of MSP professionals who trust MSPinfluencer.com to grow their business and expand their networks. MSPinfluencer.com, where today's MSP leaders connect, collaborate, and conquer, all powered by the Forza Dash platform, helping MSP vendors work effectively with MSPs and helping MSPs grow. I started, and then, Justin, I was rolling and I cracked a rib, and I never went back.
It's common. Was that jiu-jitsu?
Jiu-jitsu, yeah.
Yeah, it's very common, hey, the injuries and stuff. And I think that's maybe one of the good things about Kung Fu is like, after 15 years, we've only really started to like get very physical in the last 12 months. The first 14 years were really just about like the technique and the angles and defending yourself and, learning the correct forms and the correct techniques. And like, it's all that kind of Karate Kid stuff where it's just that same punch over and over again until you get that punch perfect, and it's just second nature. And I'm so glad I did it. And I try and encourage my son, and I try and encourage all young men to do it, because I think it's so good from a man's point of as a man to have that confidence in yourself that you kind of know what you're doing, and like I think people who know how to fight aren't really the people who choose to fight in the street. It's the guys who don't know how to fight, who are real angry, who've had a hard life, who are just, drunk or whatever. And so if you have a little bit of skill, you're in a good position.
It is the ancientness, the old, does that also attract why chess attracts you as well?
Yeah, I think I should have studied history at university now that you mention it. But like I just love, I think in the modern world, where as a society we're so lost, like I think most of us are so lost. I think the way we're designed as human beings is to live in villages with 100 or 200 people. And everyone has their role, and you have this beautiful community around you. And Gary Breck has recently said that, like, there's 3 things you need in order to live a long, healthy, happy life. It's community, whole foods, and daily exercise. And the community is one of those 3 pillars. Like, they've showed, that loneliness is a far bigger killer than smoking.
Wow.
And like we're social beings and we need that community. And like the irony of us living in these cities with millions of people, and how many people are lonely and isolated.
Hmm.
And I think that the going back, like to what you said, like there's ancient ways of doing things. I think we need to have a return to that. And I think like religion, in a sense, it provides some of that information, provides some of that structure for us as well. And I think religion gets a really bad rap, but I think religion's great for like giving you community and giving structure to your life and giving you culture and
Hmm.
traditions. And like, in America, in Australia, we've very much taken on the American religion, which is the dollar. Which is
Right.
just making money. And there's so little culture. I'm in Tuscany at the moment. This is a beautiful window behind me. I'm in Tuscany,
Beautiful.
Italy. And the culture here is just incredible. And there's you sit and chat to the old men on the street and play cards with them. And there's like all this beautiful food that's created by the nonnas in the same way their nonna's been doing their nonna and their nonna and their nonna for thousands of years. And it's like this tradition and this community and this way of living that like gets back to the roots and is the recipe for having really happy lives. And I think that's why as a company we're so focused on whole foods as well, rather than extracts or synthetic vitamins or lab created supplements. It's just about whole foods, because I believe that that's what our bodies are meant to consume, because that's what we've consumed for thousands of years is whole foods. And it's only in the last, generation or two that we started eating all these ultra processed foods that I'm not even sure they can be called food, and they're devoid of
Hmm.
nutrients. And they're, when a company makes an ultra processed food, they're thinking about shelf life. They're thinking about how do they make it addictive, so you eat the whole bag or the whole pack rather than just one. They're thinking about how do they make it look nice. They're not thinking about how to make it healthy, how to make sure
Hmm.
it retains its nutrient qualities. They're not the priorities. It's those other things that I just mentioned. And I think a lot of like our malaise in society is due to the fact that we put a lot of crap into our bodies rather than eating whole foods, or as our grandparents called it, food. That was just normal food not that long ago. And like my big mission in life is to like help people get healthy naturally. And like that's about the stuff you put in your body. Like it seems so obvious, but when I started Forest Superfoods 20 years ago, it was quite a radical, like, 13 years ago, it's quite a radical idea. This idea that like what you put in your body will have a direct impact on how well your body operates.
Hmm.
And like you look, people who study, my cousin just finished his studying medicine and he studied for 12 years. They did a week on nutrition, 1 week,
Wow. Wow.
and it's like that's so crazy, like obviously what you put in your body is going to have a direct impact on how your body operates. In the same way that if you put olive oil into your car, it's going to struggle.
Hmm.
And so like my whole thing is about helping people to get back to being healthy and living good lives, because life is far too short for anything else. It's far too short to feel shit or to feel crap all the time, and to like wake up tired and to have no energy and to be grumpy all the time and to be stressed and all these kind of things that have become so common in everyday society. I think if you can swap your diet and your lifestyle around back to those three pillars that Gary Brecker talks about, the community, whole foods, and daily exercise, I think that can make a massive amount of difference to someone's well-being. And it doesn't cost all that much money. It doesn't you don't have to study for years to do it. You don't have to commit to running a marathon every week. Like it's pretty simple stuff, but I think people don't really get that message a lot. And even even during the COVID times, which, we all learned a lot of stuff about how fragile society is and, how fragile we are as human beings as well. But why weren't people told do some exercise? Like the immune system is like what's the best way to protect yourself. And if you don't look after your immune system, you're going to get sick more.
Hmm.
Like that's just common sense. And so, yeah, so my whole thing is just like, it's not necessarily about selling product, although I do love selling product, but it's about like helping people to become healthy. And so that to me is about like having as much whole foods in your diet. So real food as close to how it appears in nature as possible, without the emulsifiers and the fillers and the extracts and the preservatives and all the other crap that goes into it, but just like whole foods, nutrient rich, that our bodies were designed to consume.
Hmm. What was your first, Justin? You said 13 years ago. What was your first introduction to superfoods?
I was traveling around India so I started a business when I was seven. I always loved business. I grew up working in my grandfather's jewelry stores when I was 13. I'd spend my weekends there bargaining with all the old ladies who were buying watches and jewelry and laughing with them and bantering. And I just loved business. I loved the relationship between the buyer and the seller and the energy of it and the relationship and I don't know. I grew up with this passion for business. And so I started this business when I was in final year of high school selling fashionable fanny packs, like leather, handmade, beautiful bags. But there was never a lot of demand for them because it's a very niche market for people that want fashionable fanny packs. Most people don't want fanny packs at all. Some people want really cheap ones, and there's a very small portion of people that want the expensive, fancy, beautiful ones. And so I was traveling around India because that's where I was getting them made. And so I was meeting with suppliers and talking to them about quality and choosing out leather and all that kind of stuff. And I discovered these green chips at the market. And I thought they must be off, because in India, you never quite know what you're getting. And so I asked the
Mm,
guy what it
mm.
was, and he said it was spirulina. And so I bought them and I ate, and they were delicious. And I was vegetarian at the time, and a lot of people in India are vegetarian because as Hindus, they don't eat meat. And so they have these other foods like spirulina, which is super high in protein and iron, B vitamins, beta carotenes, a whole lot of stuff that a lot of us get from meat. They were getting it through supplementation with these whole foods like spirulina. And moringa and ashwagandha and all this stuff, but spirulina was that first one came across, and it really kind of stuck in my head this idea that we could change our quality of our lives through the food that we eat. That's when it all started for me. And when it became this incredible kind of experience and this incredible kind of aha moment. And I thought, well, what, and it probably took me 6 years to get started, but I just always thought, wouldn't it be cool, a business that helps people to improve their health and their well-being and reduce their stress levels and have more energy and get better sleep and all these different kinds of benefits they can get just by adding these incredible nutrient-rich foods to their diet. And back when I started, I think it was about 13 years ago when I actually started the business. There was this idea in the media superfoods are just hype. Just go eat some blueberries, just go eat a banana, eat some
Mm.
spinach. And that's true. Those things are superfoods. They're nutrient rich, but the things that we sell have special active compounds you don't find in other foods. So the lion's mane mushroom, for example, has 280 active compounds. Things like hericin A, hericians, aranesian A, particular beta glucans, all these different incredible compounds you don't find in other foods or find very rarely in other foods. And there's been all these studies now that have linked these active compounds in lion's mane to better memory, better recall, protection against degenerative brain diseases, all that kind of stuff. And there's a lot of studies happening. There's still early days. There's probably 4 or 5 studies out there now that have considered, well regarded, but there's a lot of studies being done now around lion's mane and the benefits it can have on the brain. And it's this food that looks like a brain that's also really good for your brain. And so yeah, I think whole foods is the key, but there's some very special foods that it contains active compounds you don't find in other stuff. Like ashwagandha is another one of our best sellers, which is an Ayurvedic root. That the ashwagandha plant is just the root that we use, and the root has been shown through a number of studies that it reduces cortisol levels in the body, which is the stress hormone. So when I'm feeling stressed or anxious, I have some ashwagandha, and 20 minutes later, I feel far more calm and relaxed because it's reduced by
Hmm.
cortisol levels. And so there's so many different, we've got, I think, 50 different
And
foods
so
that
you kind
each
of
have these
touched.
incredible compounds in them. And yeah, I just think it still gets me excited. And you got to tell me to shut up because I'll keep rambling about it all day. But I just find it so amazing, this idea that we could change our lives and change our well-being and live more fulfilled lives just by adding these special foods to our diet. I find that incredible. And every day, I get emails, tens of emails from people just saying this food's changed my life. I got an email from a woman last week who was saying that she hasn't been able to wear her wedding ring for 10 years because she's had really bad arthritis in her fingers. And she's tried everything
Mm.
and nothing's really worked. She started taking moringa, which is another Ayurvedic plant, and all the swelling went down in her fingers. And now she's wearing her wedding ring again. It sent me a picture of her hand with her wedding ring on it and stuff. And
Hmm.
it still blows my mind. I think that's really what got me through. Someone asked me the other day, how did you get through the hard times? Because there was a number of years there when we just weren't making any money. And it was just like, some money would come in from a few sales. You use that to pay off a bill, which is overdue. And you just be juggling money around just to be able to keep the doors open. And during those times, I never really thought about quitting because I had all these emails and phone calls from people who were like, this has literally changed my life. And that for me was enough motivation to go, I'm going to stick at this because it's such an honor to be able to do something, to spend our lives and spend our time doing something that helps people because, time is so short. And I think it's a tragedy to spend your life doing something that you don't like and something which, doesn't really make the world a better place. And I think too many people are stuck in that situation. I always just felt very grateful that the work I was doing, even though I didn't make any money for a very long time, the work I was doing was helping people and making people's lives better. And I thought, to me that was super noble and super important work to do. And and this year we'll do 8 figures, but like there was a lot of years there when like it was hard to keep the lights on. And I would just do everything myself, like I started the business with that. I think there was $100 in my bank account and there was a little bit coming in through that. I've still got that fanny pack business, it's still there. And that's kind of what sustained me. That was making a little bit of money during the difficult years. And so that was kind of what allowed me to keep eating and keep paying my rent for my home and that kind of stuff during the difficult years with Forest Superfoods. But I just kind of like, I just kept going and just kept going. Well, what's the next thing to do? What's the next thing to do? And I think in business, if you could train your brain to recognize what's the next thing you need to do in order to grow your business that little bit more, to take that next step, that's almost more important than anything else in business.
Mm.
To be able to go like, okay, I know today that like, I'm losing money on my Facebook ads. I got to focus on that and I got to turn that around and make sure that starts making money. Or I've got to, do this email out to all these existing customers who I haven't spoken to for a couple of weeks. So whatever it is you need to do in order to take that business to your next level. Because even if like I'm kind of happy with how much money we're making now. Like we don't really need to make more money than what we're making now. But I think also in the same regard, like in the universe, things don't stay still. Things are always changing. And if you're not growing, you're dying. And so I think like as a business, you need to always be growing and always be focusing on like, how do I grow to that next step? How do I take my business to that next step? And if you can do that, I think you will eventually become successful because you're constantly moving forward. Whereas I think, when I first, many years ago, I thought the key to business, because I'm an accountant, I'd studied accounting and I love numbers and that kind of thing. And I always thought it's all about the numbers, it's all about being profitable. It's all about, making sure you've got good margins and you understand your expenses. And that stuff's all important, but there's no business without sales. The business doesn't exist without sales. If you've got sales, you can make everything else work. If you don't have any sales, you don't have a business.
Hey, Joey Pinz here. Want to take your podcast experience to the next level? I'm excited to invite you to become a YouTube member. It's the absolute best way to support the channel and enhance your connection. Join our amazing community and unlock the incredible perks, custom loyalty badges, exclusive emojis, and priority comment replies. Your voice will always stand out. Be the first to watch new videos with early access, receive special membership shoutouts, and get exclusive behind-the-scenes photos and updates. Dive into content available only to our members, special videos, deep dives, and insider perspectives. Engage directly with me. Suggest podcast topics you want to hear, and even get personalized video shoutouts. Hit the join button right now and become part of something special. Let's build this amazing community together. I can't wait to welcome you as a new member. Join the Joey Pinz family today. Justin, going back to the superfoods for a second. I mean,
Yeah.
what if you hear people say, well, I eat clean, so I don't need any supplements or superfoods. Your retort is?
Great. If you're happy with your health, don't change anything. Like I don't, I'm not interested in really selling anything to people who don't necessarily want it. But my whole thing is that like I was saying before, like there's specific active compounds in these superfoods that you don't find in other foods. You're not going to find the compounds in lion's mane in vegetables and fruit because specific active compounds in there that you don't find in other foods. And so, like,
Justin,
you
there was
there?
an issue with the audio video. It's back now. So my
Oh,
question was,
okay.
when people say that they get enough in their foods? You say,
Yeah. I say great. Like I say that like I'm not I don't really care whether people buy products from us or not. I just want everyone to be healthy and to live fulfilled lives because life's too short for anything else. But like, I also think, and I know from my own experience, I eat super clean. I grow 70% of the food that my family eats. I grow that in
wow.
my garden out the back of our house. And so we eat super clean already. My wife is Italian. She cooks all of our meals at home. I grow most of the stuff we eat. We eat all organic meats and we try and eat the best kind of food we can eat. And that's why we're in Italy now, because we just love good food and like eating like really, really whole foods, incredibly good nutrients and ingredients. But I think there's active compound. I think there's things in these special superfoods you don't find in other foods. Like I don't know of other foods that can lower cortisol levels when you're feeling stressed, like ashwagandha.
Mm.
I don't know of other foods that can reduce inflammation, like moringa can. I don't know other foods that can boost your energy levels and your libido when you're feeling flat, like black maca root can. Or I don't know foods that help to like improve my memory, like lion's mane does, or help to improve my gut health, like turkey tail does, whatever. Like all these foods are very special foods, and I think the most important thing is to eat whole foods. I think that's the most important thing. And I think if you don't buy superfoods, you just want to eat fruit and vegetables and whatever other whole foods you can. That's great. I'm not saying people need to eat superfoods in order to be healthy, but I'm saying these foods are tools, just like meditation's a tool, just like exercise is a tool, just like community is a tool. Having these superfoods in your repertoire, I know when I'm starting to feel a bit sick and I'm starting to feel like a bit cloudy in my head and my nose is getting chest, I go and have camu camu berry, which is like this incredible berry that grows wild in the Amazon rainforest. That's got like it's got 300% of your recommended daily intake of vitamin C in 1 teaspoon.
Hmm.
Completely bioavailable because it's completely natural. It's not made with acetic acid. It's not made with acetone in a laboratory like vitamin C supplements. It's just a berry that we encapsulate and then you eat. And so it flushes your body with vitamin C, which is super important for boosting your immune system and helping to stop you get sick. And so like you could certainly survive without superfoods. These foods weren't available in the Western world until very recently, in the last decade or two. So like I don't think people need them, and I'm not here to tell people that if you don't buy these foods and you can never be really healthy. No, it's do what's right for you and eat as much fruit and vegetables as you can and do exercise and have community. And like if you want to have some of these other tools in your chest, I think they're a good idea. And I think if you can buy high quality superfoods which aren't full of fillers and aren't full of alcohol extracts and haven't been made in like in a aren't cheap imports but are high quality superfoods that have been tested for purity and don't have heavy metals and all that kind of stuff, I think they're tools in your war chest of how to get the most out of life, because I think modern life can be super hectic and stressful for all of us. And I think having something available to help you de-stress, having something available to help reduce inflammation, having something available to, boost your brain power or to help you sleep or to give you more energy or whatever, like they're medicines. They just happen to be foods.
But Justin, how do you build trust in this market? It's flooded with snake oil and
Yeah,
with bad things. I heard you talk about how you focus on freeze dried. You feel that's
yeah.
the more responsible thing to do, and it helps the consumer. But I mean, how do you combat against that?
So, I mean, one incredible example is like in Australia, and America is the same as far as I'm aware, but like when you sell a supplement, let's say you call it ashwagandha supplement, only 10% of it actually needs to be ashwagandha. The other
Wow.
90% can be fillers and, preservatives and whatever else you want to put in it. But you can legally call that an ashwagandha supplement with only 10% ashwagandha in it. And
Wow.
I feel like that's crazy. Like, I feel like you're probably better off just having fruit and vegetable than taking that crap. And so like my
Mm.
whole thing is about educating people. And so like I do a lot of I don't like being the center of attention, but I do a lot of videos and a lot of emails, and we send emails out twice a week to 50,000 people. And we do a lot of like educational based stuff. So we've got a nutritionist on our team, and we're all about like educating people and helping people to be self-empowered to make the best decisions for themselves. And part of that, we see our role as education, because like our ashwagandha supplement, for example, is it'd be about 35 US dollars. You could probably get it from the supermarket for $8 for an ashwagandha supplement.
Mm,
And so
mm,
our role and what we've had to do as a business is to really explain to people why are you better off paying 4 or 5 times more for something which seems like it's the same thing. And people, we've had probably 100,000 people say, I tried ashwagandha from the supermarket, or I tried lion's mane from these extract sellers, or I tried the moringa that I got from the health food store, whatever it is, and then I tried yours, and yours actually did something. And of
hmm.
course it did, because it's not 90% fillers. It's like, it's just that it's single ingredient product. It's been freeze dried. And so, like, freeze drying is this incredible, very technical way of drying, which is almost equivalent to eating something fresh. So whenever you dry something, there's nutrient loss that occurs. But freeze drying stops that nutrient loss almost entirely. And so there's a whole lot of studies out there that show that, like, freeze drying is far superior to all other drying methods because it keeps most of those nutrients intact. And so it's almost the same as eating those foods fresh. And so freeze drying costs 10 times more than other drying methods, literally 10 times more. But we do it because we want to have the highest quality product possible. And when you create the highest quality product possible, people take it, they experience these incredible benefits, they tell their friends, they tell their family. If you buy a supplement that costs you $30 a month, and all of a sudden now your stress levels have cut in half, or you're able to sleep at night, or you've got energy to play with your kids, or whatever it is, like, that has a huge impact on your well-being in your life. And so, like, that kind of, like, thing of just focusing on making the highest quality product possible has really helped us to kind of get a lot of reputation in the market. And so that reputation in the market has helped us to grow and help people to really trust what we say. And even, on our Facebook ads and posts, there'll always be trolls from other sellers who don't like us talking badly about extracts or, supplements with fillers in and stuff. And they'll start trolling us in the post. And all the customers jump in and go, you don't know what you're talking about. I've been taking these supplements for 10 years. It works amazing. And so, like, we've been able to build community.
I don't know how much this is recording. I guess we'll find out. But yeah, you're talking about building trust. You're talking about building trust.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think it's, like, I heard someone the other day saying that, like, the way to be confident isn't to fake it, it's to do things that give you confidence in yourself, like the martial arts, for example. If someone's trying to start a fight with you, you don't win the fight by having all this, like, unrealized confidence and being overconfident. You realize it through all your decades of training that you've done up until that moment. And I think business is the same way. Like, I think you need to, in business, be as trustworthy as you can and do things in a way that you feel good about what you're doing and it aligns with your values and your self-worth, and you can sleep well at night knowing you're doing the right thing, and that resonates with an audience. In a world where there's so much fakeness and so much AI and so much, like, rubbish out there, I think being genuine and telling the truth and, being honest with people, they pick up on that. We all have a sixth sense. We can pick up on when people are conning us. And I think, yeah, we've just always been really focused on being as honest as possible and creating products that we want to take ourselves and give to our family. And people buy him and they love him and they tell other people. And so we've been able to grow massively while a lot of our competitors are, still struggling.
So when people are buying supplements, Justin, does it say 10% ashwagandha and 90% fillers? Or what should they look for on the bottle?
It doesn't have to say that at all. It just says how much of the active ingredient is in it. So, like, let's take ashwagandha, for example, because it's one that a lot of people know. But, like, if you take ashwagandha, you take the ashwagandha root and you dilute that, you put that in a big vat of alcohol. The alcohol will extract out 1 or 2 active compounds from the root, and then the actual root goes in the bin. So anything which is not alcohol soluble gets thrown out. But if there's enough active compound in that alcoholic liquid, then they could say it contains X amount of active compounds. And then whatever it is above that, so they could say it's got 2,000 milligrams of withenoids in it, or whatever active compound is they're going for, and the rest of it could just be fillers because they've got enough of that active compound for it to be considered a dose. So I think what's really important is to buy a superfood, buy things which are unextracted. There's no scientific literature that says you need an extract. Humans have this whole thing of like, if it's 10 times stronger than what it is in nature, it must be better. And that's not true. Like
Mm,
there's nothing to say that that's better for you. And there's been recent issues with people who have had issues from turmeric extracts with liver or kidneys, or issues with different kinds of extracts, because it's not the way our bodies were made to consume these foods. Our bodies were made to consume them as whole foods, as close to how they appear in nature as possible. And that's why so many of us get sick and overweight from eating processed
mm,
foods, because our bodies aren't meant to consume that stuff. We're not meant to consume so much sodium and so much fructose in one sitting that like our ancestors would have had that amount in a year. Our bodies don't know what to do with that. And so it's the same thing with supplements. Like I think I think the best course of action for people is to like eat as many whole foods as possible. Like if don't go to McDonald's, and if you're craving a burger, make it at home. Get
mm.
like some good quality free range beef, and get some good quality bread, and buy some lettuce and some tomatoes and whatever else you want to put on it, and make it at home. And it's all whole foods, and it's all good quality ingredients. There's no emulsifiers, and there's no like preservatives, and there's no, extra sodium that's put in there, or sugar, or whatever other crap they put in it to make it, addictive and irresistible. Eat whatever you want, but make it at home as much as possible.
Mm.
And then you know what's gone into it.
But Justin, you could see how frustrating it can be because I personally, I take lion's mane, I take turkey trot, I take ashwagandha, I take quercetin, but
Yeah.
now I'm thinking, is it good enough though? Are the ones that I'm taking just full of filler? So it's like you could see how frustrating it is for some people where they don't even want to do it because maybe they're going to go that extra mile and take supplements, but there might be the wrong one.
Yeah, and I think, people get complicated, gets confused, and people go, I'm just sick of it. I've got 100 different supplements in my cupboard. I'm just getting rid of
Right.
them all. I can't be bothered anymore. Um, and that's a real thing. And I think it's like with everything, like it's up to you to be aware of what you put in your body. And so, like, if you go and buy something from the supermarket, check the ingredients. But with supplements, they don't have to put the ingredients on it. So make
Right.
sure you trust where it comes from. Like the lion's mane is a great example of this. Most lion's mane comes from China. Like 99% of it's grown in China, which is not inherently an issue. But if it's grown in a polluted environment, mushrooms are like sponges, and they soak up whatever
Mm,
heavy metals and pollution is in the air or in the water
mm,
or in the
mm,
soil. So if they're grown in a polluted environment, there's a good chance you're taking up that pollution or those heavy metals when you're consuming that supplement. And that's why, I go foraging with my father-in-law, who's this old school Italian guy who loves like picking mushrooms and stuff, but he'll never pick them from the side of the road, because the mushrooms on the side of the road have taken in all the pollution from the cars. So we
uh,
always go far away from the road to have mushrooms. And so like it's super important to know where your mushrooms are grown and to trust the place where you're getting them from. And so that's why we grow all our mushrooms in Australia.
hmm.
All of them except for chaga, which doesn't grow in Australia, which is grown Canadian wild harvested. All the rest are grown in Australia because we know it's grown with clean water. We know it's grown without pollution. We know it's grown in a safe, ethical, high quality
Hmm.
stand to a high quality standard, and it's a product that we feel comfortable taking ourselves. Well, I wouldn't take a mushroom supplement that was grown in some far off country where they don't necessarily have the same rigorous requirements for health and pollution and all that kind of stuff as what we have in Australia. And so I think like, yeah, it can get really confusing, and it can get, you can get discouraged, but like, it's about making decisions that you're comfortable with. And we get people coming to us all the time going like, I'm not buying, why would I buy your lion's mane where I can get it for half that price from these guys? And I'm like, great. If you're comfortable taking that product, you should take it. Like
Hmm.
if save your money. But if you want the highest quality product that's got the heavy metal test there, that's been grown in Australia organically, that's freeze dried to lock in all the nutrients, that doesn't have all this alcohol added or water added or vinegar or fillers or flavors or whatever other crap they add, then come to us. And like it's this whole thing of like you could pay $20 a month for like a really crappy lion's mane product that's probably not going to do a lot, or you could pay $30 a month and get the highest quality lion's mane supplement on the planet. Like, is that like, I just don't see that as expensive. Sure, it's expensive compared to the cheaper one, but like, you get what you pay for. That old adage is more true in supplements than just about it, in a lot of other industries, because
Hmm.
like, It costs more to freeze dry. It costs more to grow in Australia. It costs more not to dilute our products in thousands of liters of alcohol or water or vinegar or whatever it is they're using, or to add flavors or to add fillers or that kind of stuff. And so like that was the big risk that I took with this business in the day one. It was going like, I don't want to sell crap. Like I'm just going to sell the highest quality stuff I can. If people want to buy it, that's great. If they don't want to buy it, cool. I'll spend more time in the garden growing food.
Hmm.
And that's still my attitude today. Like, if for some reason everyone turned around and went, you know what, we don't want to buy Australian grown stuff. We don't want the Whole Foods. We want the cheap stuff that's, mostly alcohol or fillers or whatever it is. And the business didn't have any more sales. I'd go back to growing food for my family. Like I'm happy doing that. Like that's my happy place, is being in the garden, growing food and tending to the animals and swimming in the dam. And, I love doing that stuff. But like, I feel like my purpose is to share the message of Whole Foods with people and inspire people to improve their health naturally. And so as long as there's an audience, I'll keep doing that. But I think if it turns out that people don't want them, that's okay. But I always thought it took me far too long in terms of my business career to realize that like most people don't actually want the cheapest price. People tell you they want the cheapest price, but they don't. They want the best value.
Right.
That's what they want. They want good value. And so like when you're growing your business and you're making your business, don't listen to people who whinge and complain and say your product's too expensive. Think about how can you provide the best value for those people who are willing to spend a bit more for a high quality product. Because if you're just competing on price, it's just a race to the bottom. And someone else is always going to be able to make it far cheaper than you can. The mushrooms that I could buy, the lion's mane mushroom that I sell now, I could buy it from China for a tenth of the price that we pay to our farmers.
Wow.
A tenth of the price.
Wow.
But we don't, because I don't want to sell that crap. But if in business school, they would have said, well, that's a much better option, because now you're going to increase your profitability and you're going to be able to scale more and you're going to have more cash flow and it's going to look better for investors and all that stuff. But it's not actually necessarily true. I think the way to build a long-term business is to give people incredible value. And the way to give people incredible value isn't to give them a cheaper price, it's to give them a product that does what you say it does and more. That's the key to a long-term business. And like, that's also why I feel so blessed that I've never taken on any debt, any loans, any investors, any board members, any, co-founders, nothing. Like it's just been me. It's still just me. And it means I can make those decisions without having someone telling me on the back going, hey, why don't we stop freeze drying? If we spray dried, it's going to save us, millions of dollars a year. Or why don't we stop sending people's orders express and just send them regular post? Because this was going to save us, 100 grand every month. Or why don't we stop doing Whole Foods and just start doing extracts? And because I don't want to do that stuff, because I want to sell the products that I want to take. And I think that's really important in business. There's this, people have this idea that like you can have all these, you could be a very moral, value-oriented person in your personal life, but when it comes to business, it's okay to just, be cutthroat and lie and do whatever you need to do to make a dollar. And I think that's really sad. I think like if you make money in a way in which is not ethical, I don't think you'd ever feel good about it. I don't think you'd ever be like feeling comfortable about it. And so like, my whole thing from day one has been like, I'm going to sell products that I feel good about taking myself. And so like, I think that's really important in business, is like, you got to be true to yourself. And Justin, if you don't make money, sorry.
Has there been anything in the last month or so you changed your mind on?
There's probably been a lot of things, but it's hard to think of something right off the bat. I think, I'll tell you something. So the nutritionist does our product development as well, because we want to make sure that everything we sell is like super safe to consume and really high nutrients, and there's lots of scientific data that supports it. And she's been big onto selling beef liver for ages. We've been working on a beef liver product for 9 months that we just launched 2 weeks ago. And I was like, I don't know, I don't think it's so good, I don't think it's great. And then I started doing a bit of research on it when we launched it and realized it's got all these incredible nutrients and vitamins in it, particularly B vitamins. And that's like the original superfood. Like our grandparents used to eat beef liver and chicken liver and all these organ meats, as just part of their daily routine, as a way, because they knew that made them healthier. And so I've changed my mind in terms of like beef liver. I always thought like, oh, like it's a bit like, I don't know. I felt a bit weird about eating it, but now I go, oh, that's a part of the animal that would have just probably been thrown away otherwise.
Yeah.
Because at least
Yeah.
in Australia, we don't, no one really eats it. But now we've been able to freeze dry, use Australian grown beef, freeze dry, grass fed, and it's all certified organic, freeze dried, and then put into capsules. So it doesn't taste like beef or liver or organs or anything like that. But it's got all these incredible nutrients in it. And, we call it nature's multivitamin because it's not grown in a lab. It's like it's real food that grows outside on the farm. And then it's like, and it's so high in B vitamins, always a incredible thing. So I've started taking that myself. That's one of my new favorite superfoods now is the beef liver because it's just, it's nature's multivitamin.
Very cool. So, Justin, I started my business back in the 90s and I was working way too hard, 14-hour days, 16-hour days. You're no stranger to this. And next thing I know, I'm in front of the doctor and I'm at 340 pounds. I don't know what that is in kilos. I forgot, but I'm way
Yeah.
overweight. And she tells me if I don't lose the weight, I'm not going to see my daughter graduate. So
Wow.
yeah, so it scared the hell out of me, right? So I'm driving home, punching the steering wheel. What have I done? I could abuse me all I want, but I've got this family now, right? So I spent the next 6, 7 months, lost about 120 pounds, kept it off. You can't look at it as a finishing lane. You've got these are lifelong changes. And when I tell people this, they always say, "What's your secret? What you do?" And there's no secret, Justin. Discipline. That's how I do it. That's how I do it now. Routine, willpower, etc. All under discipline. How does discipline play a role in your life, Justin Snyder?
Yeah, I think, and it's consistency, and that's incredible. You lost it that weight. That's incredible. You must, look back and go, thank you to the universe for pushing me to do that. For that,
Mm,
like, for that moment of like where everything changed and you took your life in a different direction. But I think, like, coming back to that, like, I think exercise is so important to do. But like, it doesn't have to be a struggle. It's that Robert Downey Jr. thing of like struggling against the kung fu dummy. Like, it doesn't find something that you enjoy doing. If you hate running, don't go for runs. Do some other kind of exercise that you like. But the point is to move your body. Like our bodies are designed to move. It's not, that whole thing that you hear now about like sitting is the new smoking. It's like our bodies are designed to move, and I think it's so you have to move your body every day, as at least probably half an hour a day, but do it in a way that you enjoy. If you want to go play squash, go and do that. I love
mm,
swimming, so for me, swimming isn't like a chore I have to do. I'll do it any opportunity I get because I just love being in the pool and cruising through the water. And so like I think it's so important, but I think people have this idea that like it has to be painful and it has to be a struggle. But I think if you can find a way to exercise that you enjoy, you'll keep doing it and it won't be a struggle and you're not going to give up and it's going to be a pleasure and a time to yourself and time away from the family and from work and like time off. But like my whole thing is I've always been I've always been very disciplined. Like I've always been very focused on my goals. Sometimes my wife gets really annoyed at me because I don't even hear her talking if I'm just so focused. I'm
mm,
so single-minded in terms of what I'm doing. But I think it's just about believing in what you're doing and being real. I think going to a job every day you hate is a tragedy. I think if you hate your job, you either need to find a new job or change your attitude towards it because life's too short to like spend most of your waking hours doing something you hate. And so like I've always believed in the business. I've always had fun doing it. Even in the start where I was making no money and building the website myself, I loved that. Like I remember staying up with like a pot of tea till 4 in the morning building this website that looked awful. When I look at it on Wayback Machine, it's like the worst website I've ever seen in my life. But like I had so much fun learning how to code and how to program and where to put certain things. And like, yeah, I think you have to, it's that cliche of like you have to enjoy the journey, and that's what you're doing in terms of exercise. Is like
mm.
it's not. Oh, now I've lost the weight. I'm just going to go back to this lifestyle I had before. It's like a continuous thing that never ends. And business is the same. You don't ever get to a stage in business where you go like, oh, now I'm doing 8 figures. I'm just going to retire. Like you go like, no, there's more people to reach. I can bring more people on. I can help more people. I can improve the way we do things. I can give more stuff away for free. I can, you just, it's a continual process of change. And like we said before, like things don't stay stagnant. And it's the same with exercise and health. Your health doesn't stay stagnant either. Your health is either improving or it's declining.
Hmm.
And so that choice, so like I've always thought about that in business is like if my business isn't growing, it's dying. So I'm always like, okay, what's the next thing we need to do to get to that next level? Like, okay, I want to improve how far I swim. Tomorrow, instead of swimming a kilometer, I'm going to swim 1.2 kilometers. I want
Hmm.
to get better in my relationships. All right, what can I do to improve my relationship with my wife? What can I do to like, improve my diets, whatever. Like, I think we should always be trying to improve ourselves, and it's not about being outwardly better. It's not about posting on social media and like, having everyone else go, oh, wow, he's living a great life. It's about you feeling really good about yourself and constantly improving. And, I think it'd be really scary to look back at on a year ago and not feel like you've grown heaps. Like that would be the worst. I think you should get every year, you should look back on yourself from a year ago and go, wow, I've come so far.
Hmm.
And that comes from this attitude of constant improvement and constantly doing things better. And when you believe in what you're doing, you want to keep doing it better. And when you start feeling healthier, you that gives inspires you to keep doing it. And when you find out, when you keep hearing from people that whose lives you're changing through your business, you want to keep changing more lives. And like, I think our brains, I've got a pretty addictive personality, and I think a lot of us do, really. Like we can get really hooked into bad habits, but we can also get hooked into good habits. And we can use that same thing in our brain that gets addicted to drinking every night or eating junk food or sitting on the couch or whatever. That same part of our brain that gets into those bad habits can also get into those good habits.
Hmm.
You can like, force yourself to exercise every single day or do breathing exercise every morning before you get up. And after 30 days, it's not even a choice anymore. It's just what you do. In the exercise and the food and the breathing exercises in your business and whatever it is. Like, I think, you just force yourself to do it like when you're a kid and you try a cigarette and you hate it, but you
Hmm.
force yourself to do it, and then you become addicted to it. And that can go in a positive way as well. You can force yourself the first couple of times to go for walks after work instead of sitting on the couch. And then you start to like it and you start to see results and you start to enjoy the experience and you start to become a source of pleasure for you, and it becomes a positive addiction. And I think we can use our brains we can use those habit patterns of our brain in a positive way to
I
be more
agree.
disciplined.
I agree. I mean, the mission of this podcast is to keep learning. If I'm not doing that, I don't know what I would be doing. What motivates you?
Um, I think it's seeing results from customers. Like in
Hmm.
terms of business, I think like it still gets me excited. Like I'll joke with the other team because I'll go, one day, some occasionally I'll sit down when I've got a spare minute and start reading through some of the review. We've got, I think, 9,000 reviews on the website with videos and pictures and people's stories. Sometimes when I got spare time or I'm sitting on a plane, I'll start reading through them and I'll get so excited. I'll be like, wow, I've got to start taking ashwagandha. This is incredible. I get really excited reading about people's stories. And that's what really motivates me, is being able to help people and be able to change people's lives through food. And I think, yeah, I think it's really exciting. And I get excited by, I think that I get excited by business. I get excited by growing food. And I love growing food because I feel like it's such an honorable skill to have, to be able, it was normal a couple of generations ago to just grow all your food. But I love this idea that like I can take a tiny little seed and plant it in some good quality soil and it'll produce 300 kilos of food. Like to me, that's a miracle. Like
Wow.
my kids get so annoyed because I go, oh, I rant about it all the time. But like, I just love growing stuff and tasting things in the garden and being able to provide all this incredible food for my family and go and sit under the mulberry tree and just eat mulberries till we feel like we're going to vomit. And like, I just get motivated. I get motivated by nature, and by like how incredible this world is around us. And so many of us live in cities that we forget we're animals inside this incredible ecosystem that like somehow all works together and provides all these foods, and the leaves or the trees always know when to drop their leaves, and like the same time every year they produce these incredible fruits for us, and like these tiny little seeds can, have hundreds of kilos of food. And like, I think, I spend a lot of my time encouraging people to grow food, even just in a small way, because I think it's so empowering and I think it's incredibly self-sufficient. I think it's the healthiest food you can eat is the food you grow yourself. And I think it's so much fun and it's so good. Like there's plenty of studies out that show like having your hands in the soil, having your hands in the dirt, going for a walk in the forest does incredible things for your mental health.
Mm-hmm.
Because like that's what we're designed to do. We're designed to have that connection with nature. There's this quote that I always stuff up. It's like, the sickness of our society is in direct proportion to our disconnection from nature. And I think like we as a society need to get back to trusting in nature and to like being part of nature and being in awe of nature. And that feeds back into the whole foods thing. Like we're not taking, the lion's mane and going, how can we take this lion's mane and make it 100 times stronger than how lion's mane is in nature? No, we're going like, how can we take this incredible mushroom that just grows by itself in nature and provide it to our customers as close to how nature makes it as possible? It's a completely different way of looking at supplements from how everyone else does it. Everyone else is going, how do we make it 10 times stronger? How do we make it 1,000 times stronger? But what kind of like, or how do we make it cheaper so we can sell more of it at a cheaper price and do high volumes? But like, there's a cost to that. And so like, for me, I trust in the way nature does things. And I think if human biology is created in such a way, we've evolved alongside these plants in such a way that like our bodies recognize plants as food, as medicine, but I don't know, and I don't think our bodies recognize extracts as food because it's so foreign to our bodies. In the same way, ultra-processed foods are so foreign to our body, and they cause obesity and heart problems and everything else. I think extracts are the same, and I think I spend a lot of time ranting and carrying on to people, whoever will listen, that like I think you should. I think that if you're unsure and you're talking about before being confused and being a bit discouraged by all this different information you get and stuff, and like I think if you go back to like think about how does nature do it, I think it's really hard to go wrong when you just trust in nature and the way in which nature does things, because nature's pretty incredible.
It sure is. So given that your motivation is impact and nature, Justin, how do you measure success?
We have, my team has KPIs and stuff that I want people to meet, because I think that like I measure it financially. I measure it based on how many customers we're serving. I measure it on our revenue, on our profitability, on our return on ad spend, on all those kind of things, because I think those metrics are the way in which we as a society determine success and the way in which we determine whether a business is growing or shrinking. And like we said at the very start, like, a business is either growing or it's dying. And in order to make sure the business is continually growing, I need to be looking at those mostly financial factors to ensure that they're improving all the time in order to make sure that the business is healthy and it's growing and we're able to bring on new people and we're able to, spend money on stuff, because we've never taken out, everything's self-funded. So like we need to make sure we've always got plenty of cash to be able to pay for stock. And there was a incredible documentary that came out about 18 months ago on Netflix called Fantastic Fungi, all about with Paul Stamets. It was all about mushrooms and how incredible they are. And as soon as that documentary came out, well, I didn't know it at the time, but I was sitting having dinner, and all of a sudden we went from getting one sale every couple of seconds to just like 20 sales every second. Like
Wow.
just like the sales were it was 10x that moment that documentary came out. And like, we need to have huge amounts of stock, and luckily we had the cash and we had supplies to be able to fulfill that demand. But like that happens all the time in this industry, because these foods could change people's lives, and it just takes one study to come out that goes, oh wow, turns out moringa, and there's been studies like this already, but moringa is better for inflammation than the pharmaceuticals that people are taking for inflammation that have all these kind of side effects, and people just start buying moringa. And all of a sudden, it just goes crazy overnight, like it is at the moment. Our moringa sales have 4x since March. And so like that happens all this time in the industry. And so like we need to be prepared for that. And because we're self-funded, we need to have certain things in place to make sure that we're able to, meet that demand, to be able to, supply those orders. And
Want to show your love for discipline, inspiration, and the Joey Pinz podcast? Now's your chance. Introducing the brand new Joey Pinz merch store, where style, meets discipline. Choose from premium apparel, cozy hoodies, stylish hats, durable bags, and your new favorite coffee mug, all featuring the iconic Joey Pinz logo. Perfect for podcast fans, discipline enthusiasts, or as unique gifts for friends and family. Every purchase supports the Joey Pinz Discipline Conversations podcast, helping us continue to inspire greatness and promote positive change. Visit joeypins.com/store today and wear your discipline proudly. Joey Pinz merch. Wear it, share it, and live it. Well, Justin, I love what you're doing, and I love your attitude of, quality first, and I really appreciate your time today. How can people get in touch with you?
So people can go to forestsuperfoods.com. That's Forest Superfoods with one R in Forest. And there you'll be able to purchase all the products, and there's a quiz, and you can get in touch with a nutritionist if you have any questions. We do complimentary consultations for everybody. And you can read about the different products and look at all the reviews. We do fast shipping to the US. I think shipping's free to the US if you spend $120. We're also got a couple of products on Amazon. And then if you want to reach out to our team, you can do through Facebook, YouTube, Instagram. And if you want to reach me directly, I'm Justin H. Snyder at LinkedIn.
Very cool. Forestsuperfoods.com. Like you said, you're on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and then you personally on LinkedIn. Justin, I thank you so much for your time. Next time I'm in Northern Italy or in Australia, perhaps we'll get a cup of tea.
I'd love that. Sounds awesome.
You be well, Justin.
Thanks, Joe. Good to meet you.
Thank you for listening and or viewing Joey Pinz Discipline Conversations. Please share this episode with one or two of your friends who you think may benefit from the episode. Our website, www.joeypins.com. There you'll find lots of resources and you could join our mailing list. Please follow us on all our social media, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Podcast information, the video version of our podcast is on YouTube. Please subscribe. Audio is on all major podcasting platforms. Please follow them. And if you like it, please consider giving 5-star rating. Would really appreciate that. Thank you again for listening or watching Joey Pinz Discipline Conversations.